Have you ever felt a little bit nervous, heart racing, maybe not being able to catch your breath, sweating profusely, negative thoughts, and just overall uncomfortability before an event? Then you're probably feeling a little bit of pre-performance anxiety. And I know for a fact that I'm definitely feeling a little bit right now. My name is Sami Gothberg, and I work for the Hope Center as a school-based clinician at Vail Ski and Snowboard Academy. And this is Dr. Harlan Austin. He is a sports psychologist at Howard Head Sports Medicine, and today we are going to talk to you a little bit about pre-performance anxiety.
Sami, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here and be a part of the discussion. A lot of times when we have pre-performance anxiety, it's when we have a big event coming up. And so there's a couple of different types of big events. Some of the big events that I've seen folks deal with are ones that are end of the season, championship oriented, something that there's a lot of build up to. So there's a lot of time to build in the mind ideas about what could go right, what could go wrong. Another way that I see it show up is when folks are returning from an injury. So they haven't been able to do their sport for a long time, and so now they're trying to get back to perform. But there's been this big gap in their ability to be on the field or on the ski hill. And so when they're returning to perform again, we have that buildup of the thoughts and the feelings that are anxious in nature. So those are the two main areas where I see it show up for folks. But it can show up anywhere. It can show up in your day-to-day life. It can really be something that's a part of performance for anyone.
I know at my work at VSSA, I see a lot of the pre-performance anxiety show up for fear of negative social evaluations, whether that's from parents, teachers, friends, coaches. A lot of the anxiety comes from, if I don't perform well in this certain event, what are going to be the social ramifications after that?
Yeah, it's great that you said that, because when I conceptualize performance, I usually have these three areas that I look at. So there's a biological piece to that, so what's happening in the body, and then there's a psychological piece to that. So what are we thinking about? What's our thoughts and feelings? But then there's also a social component to that. And so that's what's happening around my world. And you really hit that right on the head, where we have folks, especially adolescent age folks, your social status, where you stand, how you compare to other people is a really big deal, and where you fit in the world is a really big deal. So that social anxiety is a big thing. But of course nowadays it's even more complicated than it used to be, because everyone's got their own social media following. Yes. And so the audience is bigger than it used to be. And so if you fall or you miss a shot and it's on somebody's Instagram and the entire school district sees it, that feels really different than it did back in the 90s. If I would have missed a shot, nobody knew about it but me. Yes,
and I love the piece that you hit on with the physical and psychological components of pre-performance anxiety, and the combination of the somatic and the cognitive processes creates so much tension in the body, which then creates tension in the mind, which ultimately just creates an entire performance breakdown and can be incredibly detrimental to their athletic success.
I'm curious, when you see somebody who has a lot of that somatic stuff going on and they're anxious, what do you like to suggest as far as interventions to help folks?
I always try to follow kind of the idea of matching the intervention to the type of anxiety that the athlete is experiencing. So if the athlete is experiencing somatic anxiety, like you were saying, within the body, I would like to match the intervention to that. And one of the most simple interventions that we can do to piggyback off of that is just you doing breath work, just practicing diaphragmatic breathing and practicing box breathing or whatever breathing technique works. For those that don't know, box breathing is a form of deep breathing where basically you are going to create a box in your mind where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. So it kind of creates this metaphorical box in your head while you go on a breathing rate of 4 seconds. So we are going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4.
Feel better already.
Great. Yeah, it's that simple.
It's funny because it's such a simple intervention, but we forget all the time. I forget all the time. I mean, it's one of those things that we need reminded. What can I do to breathe? Oh yeah, that's right, just breathe. And just walk yourself through this thing that you know how to do, and then the body will respond. So a lot of times people talk about things as being anxious or anxious before performance, when sometimes it's really just excitement, and helping them understand that physiological activation, so your heart rate increasing and your mind kind of changing the way that it's thinking isn't always a bad thing, but helping people understand what's going on with their body, with their mind, and being able to label it appropriately can help them get into that zone of optimal performance. So they can understand that if I'm about to go into a championship race, I probably should feel a little bit of activation. I shouldn't be just completely zen, and that's okay. But understanding that and helping them have the language to understand where am I at, what's happening with me, how can I appraise my internal situation and the external situation, and then make adjustments to put myself in that zone that I need to be so that I can perform at my best.
I love your point about appraisal and how our mind interprets the amount of arousal or anxiety that we're experiencing, because research has shown over and over again that if you are experiencing anxiety and appraising it in a negative way, that your mortality rate increases because of the physiological effects of that. Your cardiac efficiency decreases, your respiratory rate decreases, your blood flow decreases, and all of that can lead to long-term consequences within your body.
Yeah, I mean, it affects everyone. It really does. In fact, I've had lots of folks I've worked with in the past who are adults, and their anxiety is related to performance, but it's performance at work. So in certain situations, in one case I'm thinking about in particular, somebody was at a place in their career where they were going to have to do some new behaviors. And so those new behaviors included them having to be more in charge and do some public speaking. And that was something for them that was outside of their comfort zone. And so it was still a performance. It was something that was important for them to learn how to deal with. But it was certainly showing up in a lot of ways cognitively, like a lot of negative self-talk. They were also having a lot of physical symptoms where they were feeling tension and shortness of breath. And so working with those folks to understand that this is a performance just like if it were on a court or in a field of play. This is you stepping up and trying to meet the demands of your environment. And so helping folks use the exact same tools that we use in sport, outside of sport, is really beneficial. And it's something that I think everyone can relate to. If you have to do something new, and we talked about appraisals before, if you look at that thing as a threat, you're going to feel really anxious and it's going to seem like something you want to avoid. But if you look at it as a challenge, it's a new thing for you to overcome, it's a growth opportunity, and we can come out the other side feeling much better about ourselves.
So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how much anxiety that you are experiencing. It matters more how you cope with it. I know today with recording this video, I had a lot of pre-performance anxiety. I had a little during performance anxiety, and hopefully now I can say that I completely embraced the anxiety and got through this process, and I hope we taught you some skills for you to embrace the anxiety too. Thank you, Dr. Harlan Austin, for joining me today.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
Me too.